What's up, everybody? Renee here. So, Adam Sandler's latest Netflix movie, Spaceman, is now out. And this week, I had a really nice chance to catch this screening of the movie. And what made this really special was that the director, Johan Renck, was there in attendance and did a nice little QA after the fact. This all went down at my favorite place that I always like talking about, Museum of Moving Image, where I always have great opportunities to see special screenings there. And what was really nice, and what is usually always nice, to hear the filmmaker themselves talk about the movie after you watched it. Johan goes into little details about the meanings behind the film, how it was like working with Adam Sandler, Carey Mulligan, and Paul Dano, and of course fielded some questions from the audience. So whenever I have a chance to share these experiences with you, that's what I like to do, and that's what I like to do here in the channel. So whether you like the movie or not, it's always fun to hear the filmmaker actually talk about the filmmaking process. So obviously, if you enjoyed this kind of stuff, make sure to show your support. Hit that like button. If you didn't like any of this stuff, hit the dislike. If you want to see more of this type of content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and make sure you turn on the notification bell so that you get notified every time a new video is posted. I also do live streaming on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the morning after live stream. That's where I talk about the latest and greatest in movie news, pop culture related stuff. I do movie reviews, streaming reviews, all of that. So if you want to spend your mornings with me while I drink my coffee and read some of the headlines, come on by and hang out. All right, without further ado, check out and enjoy this Q&A session with Johan Renck from the Museum of Moving Image for the movie Spaceman.
So let's talk about Spaceman, which you all just had the pleasure of watching. So I have a question to start, which is, I haven't read the book, but from what I've read about the book, it seems like it has, there's a sort of, there's a sort of absurdist quality maybe to the writing or to the premise or to, some part of it. And your film, I would say, is a sort of serious, it's a serious film. And I just want to ask about that process of making a serious film out of like a, something. I think you know what my question is.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yes. I mean, the themes of the book are kind of intact to some extent, but the book itself is in its tonality and language is more about a lyrical playfulness and actually somewhat sort of Eastern European absurdity, kind of Bulgakov-esque, in its absurdity. So the book houses that kind of sort of. There's definitely an Eastern European sort of sense of humor to it, but at the same time, you always take liberties in translating, something like literature into films because they have such different voices, and for me to, because I found the themes of the film are both very truthful and authentic and also very kind of very resonates very closely to me in some way. I didn't want to sort of nullify the gravity of those themes by being too funny. So because I'm a serious guy, and these are serious themes, I think,
Yeah.
but we kept some of it. There's sort of these subtleties, and of course it's the idea itself of some weird giant spider in space is absurd and kind of funny.
Yeah. Totally. And I mean, I think one of my favorite scenes from the film is when they hug, which is so tender. And, to me, that was, obviously there's sort of two central relationships in the movie. One is obviously between the character and his wife, but definitely the other one is this, it's almost like I wouldn't call it a comedy, but a buddy
movie. Yeah,
It's kind of a buddy movie.
it's kind of a buddy movie, isn't it?
And I mean, I think it's super tender and really nice to watch from that perspective.
No, I agree, and I do think there is. It is a bit of a buddy movie between Hanush and Jakob. Of course, reluctantly they, it follows that vernacular, doesn't it? One part really dislikes the other one until he, cannot wave it off anymore and has to kind of, embrace it figuratively and literally at some point. But I mean, I think it's also that relationship follows the arc of the sort of the maturity of Jakob, because he's this, self-involved, arrogant, and vain guy to some extent. So that's the despicable sides of him. But the other not despicable sides of him is that it's kind of in his nature. He's not going to investigate the cloud only for vanity reasons. He does it because he has to. He's an explorer, like, and it just tells him, So and that side you can understand him. So he's not, 100% terrible human being, even though he's kind of kiltered off a little bit in terms of how to balance his life, I guess, But yeah.
No, and I think those themes of sort of certainly the astronaut who, can only go on the mission by himself and, is sort of doing this for the good of humanity, but then he's very far from humanity, is something that I've certainly seen in both fiction and documentary and talking to scientists. And I was wondering, I noticed when I was reading the credits, that you had a few consultants on the film. So I wanted to ask about that. I think, I was trying to scroll them down while they were going, but I think one was maybe a former astronaut. And yeah, I just wanted to ask about, I guess, why you employed them and how you work together.
No, but we had a former astronaut who was consultant. He was present a lot because I had so many questions all the time. But those questions were literally like, what does it smell like on the ISS? And what, like very specific questions and trying to understand. Because to me, it's important to, even though this is, bizarre and absurd in so many ways, like, in the first place, why would you send somebody alone to the other side? What's the purpose of that maneuver anyway? But again, I am infatuated by this, the solo spaceman, perhaps invented by David Bowie back in the days with Major Tom and all of that. It's not. I don't really know if there's anything as powerful as before that moment, actually. But anyways, yes, we had that. But we also had, Adam and I had a Zoom call with the ISS with them up there, which was like mind-blowingly cool, to be honest. And just to, because again, there's a million videos you can find on YouTube, like, this is how you eat in space, and this is how you do this and that in space, and here's how static electricity works, and this is how inertia works, all that kind of stuff. But that stuff, doesn't really interest me so much. Obviously what interests me is like, the psychology of it and how do you feel, how does it feel up there. And then in one moment when we were talking to the guy in the ISS, he was just rolling around in the ISS with a laptop. And then he entered kind of where the observation dome is, and then he just like, hey guys, look at this. And he just turned his computer to Earth. And we're just like, both, I don't know, just like kind of like dizzy from how bizarre that was, that he's there, and at this very moment he's looking down at us there, and they're removed from Earth, but Earth just keeps doing its thing, whether they're there or not. Nothing changes, all these kind of weird things. So for me, yes, there's some consultancy that has to do with pure authenticity in order to get things right. So that, because I do think that I want to, like, if an astronaut watches this film, they're not going to go like, what is this tomfoolery? I want them to kind of say that at least it's like, yeah, that's a reasonably authentic experience, what it's like.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting. I heard that there's no smell in space. Did that check out?
Well, there's no smell in space because space is vacuum, so there's nothing, but the ISS stinks. And what it says is the way you notice that is because you use an accustomed to the smell so quick, because it's just circulated air all the time. But what happens is that when you jump into your spacesuit to do a spacewalk, you have to fix something on the outside. And the air sources that is in there, in the tubes or whatever, is of much purer quality. So you hop in there and then you go, and then when you come back and you get hit by because it's very, circulated air, filtered. It's dusty in there, because again, everything that's in there stays there. You know what I mean?
Actually, never thought of that. That's disgusting. We'll dissuade any future astronauts. No, but the sort of production design I found really beautiful and so meticulous, and the way you kind of shoot the inside of where he is from the start, where it kind of looks like it's all taped together in this way, and the way he's trying to fix things. And I was wondering a little bit what inspired the aesthetic of the
There's
spaceship.
no, I mean, aesthetically, just a simple question. I love images, and to me, the production design, whatever I do, is more important than anything else, because I know that if you give me a bad room, there's nothing I can do to ever make that look appealing. But give me a good room, that's the easiest thing on the planet, And I've always been interested in the image creation of it. Johan Renck, who's my production designer, who I've worked with for 20 years or something like that, him and I have a shorthand and very sort of mutual, tastes and sensibilities and all that kind of stuff. So that's the pure aesthetics. The choices of colors and all that kind of stuff. But the interior of the spaceship, that people are thinking that is some a artistic choice. It isn't really, because what it is the idea of, if you're going on a solo mission in space, you have to be able to fix things. Me, for instance, if my iPad would break, I would have no idea ever how to even fix anything. But if my lawnmower, which is a diesel-driven, I think I could possibly try to fix it. So the idea of making the ship very analog is so that it's fixable. 6 months in space, everything is exposed, nothing is hidden behind panels. Because I asked the astronaut guy, I was like, what are you most afraid of when you're in space? And he said electricity, because there's so much very high voltage electricity in the ISS and so on and so forth to power up all the machines and whatever it is. And it's like, it's literally, there's risk affiliated with that. So it's the same thing here. You can't have electricity hidden behind panels. You got to be able to quickly find and figure out the problem that you're dealing with. And also, let's keep it as analog as ever possible. It's better to project images in the Check Connect, because if you have a screen of an LED screen or some kind of screen, if that breaks, then you're screwed, so to speak. So that was the idea behind that is form and function more than anything else, and like finding a reasonable, functioning way of what it would be like to have to be solo to travel to Jupiter.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Did you calculate the amount of time it would take?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes approximately, in an arbitrary number of around 50,000 kilometers an hour, which is like not an unreasonable number when it comes to space travel. And it takes you basically 6 months to get to Jupiter, around 500 million miles or something like that, and then 6 months back.
Interesting.
Yeah. And here's this is obviously not a science fiction film, but there is some science fiction in there. And one of those things is our invention of the Check Connect quantum.
Yeah.
Because if you would talk with existing technology, if you're talking from Jupiter to Earth, I could be wrong right now in terms of specificity, but it's around 8 hours for the signal to get there, and then under 8 hours to get an answer. And that would be a very long film with those conversations with Peter and stuff like that. So we invented this sort of Check Connect quantum, which is sort of formulated around the technical possibility of sending signals at near speed of light, And that it would still take a few minutes, but at least we chopped off hours and hours and hours of what that signal would deal with. But it's like the technology doesn't really exist, but the theory is that this technology is feasible and would work out. So it's like the science fiction of it all is reasonably legit.
Except for the spider.
Well, do you know all creatures in the universe?
I should be so lucky to hope to meet that Hanush one day. No, I thought that there was an interesting kind of sub-current maybe that I read into the film, which had to do with like the technology and the Check Connect, like you talked about, and kind of the like Peter on his shoulder and the immediacy of like the immediate potential, I guess, of that communication, and then also kind of the vapidness of it, and like actually what are you going to talk to someone about all the time?
No, but that to me was very fascinating. Also, Peter's job, to kind of be 24/7 standby to this arrogant dick of an astronaut, to some extent, and to be at the beck and call of him at all times, and also his mood swings. He can be grumpy, and Peter's kind of impervious. It's just like water on a goose. It's kind of the idea of his personality. He would just like, okay, I'll try, I'll find another report. There's no point in even going into trying to calm him down or doing anything like that. So I had a lot of fun with Canal, who plays Peter, and talking about what how servile he is, but also how much whenever he leaves work, how few fucks he cares about this astronaut over there, in all honesty.
Yeah, I would love to see. Maybe there's like a sequel where you just see.
Oh yeah, I know. I love that. Peter's next stage in life.
I have a lot more questions, but I do want to check in with the audience to see. Is there a question they'd like to ask? Yeah.
Hi. I really enjoyed the film. I want to ask you about the music of the film because I find it really beautiful and it's composed by Max Richter and also there's the sound in the end, but it's the collaboration between him and Sparks, which is also a band that I really like. So I want to know a little bit more about why do you think?
Yeah. A great question. Important question. Thank you.
I'll just repeat it, which was the question was about the music.
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about music. I used to be a musician myself back in the days, and I think for me, in my filmmaking, I tend to use a lot of music because I love it. In terms of visual storytelling, but also like that's my kind of tool. I just love to watch films that uses music as a tool like that. And Max Richter, obviously an iconic and great composer, and I felt he would so perfect for this particular film in terms of the fact that he has this kind of romanticism. He has this romantic side with him, and a beauty that is, also kind of, I would say, romantic in some way, and those themes that pertain mostly to the relationship between Jakob and Lenka. I wanted them to have romance in them, even though it's melancholic, also of course. But it's romantic fundamentally. And then Max, we had a lot of fun, with him working on scoring the film. I can kind of speak music, and I know exactly what I want stuff to feel like. So I think it was a feasible process for him to go through it. He didn't have to deal with somebody who didn't understand it, at least. But then he said, like, we should write a song for the end titles, and put some vocals on it and stuff like that. Do you have any ideas? And I said, yeah, I know exactly what we should do, because in the mid-70s, when I was around 10 years old, my grandmother came to me and my brother, and she knew that we liked music, and she gave me a cassette tape of Sparks Come On My House. And then every Christmas for the following years was a new Sparks tape, So the Sparks was my absolute first, idols. I really idolized them as a kid. And then through some weird serendipitous events, because I, ended up doing a lot of music videos and things like that, I got to know them. So I've known them for a long time. I would say almost 20 years. And I meet them every time I'm in LA. Saw them now the day before yesterday when I was there. So I called them. I called Ross and Ron and said, "Here's the thing, Max Richter, blah blah blah, a movie, blah blah blah. You want to do it?" And they did it together, and it became. I love that song. I think it's really beautiful, and it's very much Sparks, and it's very much Max, and it's like such a cool little ribbon on the film in the end. Actually.
Did I see another?
So somewhere over here.
Yeah, I think right there, the second row. Yeah.
We were just talking about the time period. Is it supposed to be contemporary or is it set earlier?
Whatever you want.
It's just something that looks kind of analog and buttony and something that looks really modern.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I have a soft spot for films that are kind of, I wouldn't say anachronistic, but at least has a timelessness to them. Whether it's like Clockwork Orange or a lot of films that I loved growing up, and I always like when films take place aside of our timeline, so to speak. I would never ever, I don't think I would know how to do a film that takes place where there's Starbucks or sort of iPads and stuff like that. I don't even know how to do that, to be honest. But I do, there is, obviously, it has this kind of slight retro-futuristic feel, I guess, but still the meaning, the idea is that it's kind of now, but in a liberal, more free way of saying what now is, because we're in space and we're in a very few limited sort of interiors down on Earth. And it's just a way to, aesthetically make it interesting, but also, again, there's so many things going on in this film that are not from our reality, so to speak. So it becomes one of those kind of parallel times, that if you need those markers, so to speak. I personally, I just kind of like when I don't really necessarily know exactly what it is, but it kind of just works for me because it's timeless.
No, I feel like there's something also interesting to it in the genre of space movie, if you will. Like if you think of, as you all might know, we show 2001 a lot in this theater. This museum was, a little bit modeled after that. And that space station has a very modern look done, in the 60s, but actually is not so similar to the way that, like the ISS looks or things like that. Like if you see images of real.
No, but I mean, 2001 also has a lot of rock furniture and all that kind of stuff. But it also is and that's the second thing. I don't believe in the sleek kind of Apple-looking future at all. I believe in the kind of Kyoto-looking future in which you have like a brand new 100-floor skyscraper in chrome, and next to it is a temple from the 8th century. And I really believe in that. And I also don't believe that we're going to get more and more organized and more orderly. I believe more and more chaos. Like any big massive cities, like that's what I think. How more an idea of what the future looks like. I do not like these kind of white, sleek, sort of chromy, clean. I just there's no reason at all for anything to ever look like that. Practically, aesthetically, nothing of it.
We can keep this going. Okay, I see lots of hands now. I think in the tan sweat, you.
Love the film. With the loneliness being a key theme, how did that sort of translate onto the set itself, where you have these three leads who are not really physically present, with Paul Dano being the voice, and Carey Mulligan and the Adam Sandler just being like worlds apart?
No. But also they were not there at the same time ever, kind of. You know what I mean? And we shot in the tail end of the pandemic, so everything was kind of slightly isolated as it was. The film set itself was, in tiers of like who could access what, So in the inner sanctum, there was the only person there was Adam, to be honest, because also in order to achieve, the zero gravity. If you're filming in zero gravity, you're going to kind of subject your camera to the same physical as what's going on there. So I wanted the cameras to feel weightless or zero gravity, as if our operators were floating around the same way. So I tasked my DP, Jakob Ire, with sort of figuring out how to do that. And he said, like, after a lot of thinking, and he came in and said, like, oh, we have this tiny little set that we built in the shape of a spaceship, and we're going to shoot it all with like 60-foot cranes, which we did. So in order to get into the ship with 360 heads so that the cameras can move around their own axis and then go up and down side and in and out. So everything is shot with cranes. So, and I was, outside by the monitors. The operators were operating the cranes like 60 foot. Adam was completely alone, acting as tennis ball, and you would have perhaps either a script supervisor or at times me or at times my friend Elke, who's like a performance artist who I brought in to kind of help out so that Adam at least would have some kind of spider to perform with, Elke is this like lunatic performance dance kind of artist. And she was when she was around and available, it was really good. But for the most part, even when she was there, she had to hide behind the wall because I needed, the plates to put in Hanush. But I don't really remember your question, but yes, there was definitely loneliness going on, left, right, and center there. And for me, it was by far the most frustrating sort of thing work-wise that I've done, because I came home every day with only half a film. I came home with Adam's side and a wall, and in my mind, cognitively, I knew like, hey, we're going to get all the other pieces, but it started to stack up. So after a couple of weeks shooting this thing, I can't sleep at night. I'm tremendously frustrated, angry, and weird, because you're used to coming home from a shoot of having both sides of the dance, and you feel, oh, what a great performance this was, and he was so great, and she was so great, and all that, and I can see how this is going to work. But I just came home with like tidbits in a plastic bag, and I was like, I have no idea how this is going to play out at all. That was not your question.
No, Yeah. I think back there, yeah.
One question. What do you want the audience that sees this movie to come away?
Yeah, I have an answer for that. There's a moment in the film when the Korean spaceship comes and Jakob says like, oh, now I feel fear, and Hanu says, but you also feel hope. That is the wisdom of your kind, Hanu says. And I really think that is the wisdom of our kind, our ability to see hope in almost any situation. And I think even if it's just about self-perseverance or if it's about, the human condition, I think, hope is always kind of there to some extent. And for me, this is very much a film about hope. I'm not trying to say like, okay, they're going to get back together, get married and have more kids and everything's going to be fine. But we're saying at least that they're going to give it a shot, and that hope, there's hope in that. And I think on both ends, both these characters, I think, are ready to give it a serious try. And that kind of hope is kind of what I think the whole film is about. Like if you're prepared to do the work, and if you come to this thing in which you understand that you have to deal with whatever trauma you have and then move on instead of kind of lingering in it. I mean, this is simplification, and sometimes things can be way harder than that. But the general principle of dealing with it and moving on is, I think, a maneuver of hope in general terms. There's a new start whenever you want to have a new start. That was deep.
It was deep. It was beautiful. I think the woman in the yellowish sweater. Yes, you.
I had a question about Hanush. So I feel like when I think of a giant spider, it kind of seems like a very earthly fear. And so I'm wondering a little bit about the symbolism of having this kind of like otherworldly creature be a spider, essentially, or something that we all kind of have in our collective.
No, yes, I agree. I mean, this is something we've been thinking a lot about, and which is relevant. I have a very kind of metaphysical sort of theory around that. It is described as a spider in the book, so to some extent I want to kind of stay true to that. But what I think, like Hanush is from the beginning of time, so he's 14.5 billion years old. I mean, he's from a time when carbon atoms didn't even exist. At the beginning of the universe, these things did not even exist. After the Big Bang or something like that. So I'm thinking that Hanush, as a creature, assumes a form in some kind of weird metaphysical way as a reflection of whatever his onlooker may or may not be. So I'm kind of presuming that Jakob is an arachnophobiac, and that this is kind of how he matter doesn't exist. Everything's just vibrations, at least according to string theory. So nothing exists. It's all just vibrations, and whatever kind of vibrations Hanush, the form he assumes. I mean, he's so profound and so wise that like even a physical appearance is kind of, I think, it's kind of below him. You know what I mean? It's like he's now, it's him meeting Jakob is like me trying to deal with a slug. That's kind of the difference in wisdom and understanding about how the universe works. So the leap is that big between the two of them. So my thinking is that, Hanush comes to the ship, finds Jakob, and decides to kind of linger in the shadows and observe him a little bit, and he starts going into his mind to kind of mine some of his memories, like we know he's able of. When that happens, he kind of leaves some kind of imprint in Jakob's head that causes this nightmare when he dreams about a spider coming out from his nose and mouth and all that. And then, Hanush is a very gentle and courteous figure, so he still doesn't make himself known. And then when Jakob's trying to call Lenk on the Czech Connect, Hanush inserts himself and says, "Hello, can I be of any help?" And Jakob freaks out. "No, what the hell's going on here?" So Hanush again retreats. But then I think Hanush, and because he's, again, so profoundly wise, but he has no idea how to deal with the slug, so I think he just thinks like, I'm just going to show myself, and we'll figure it out, and that's what he does. But to me, somewhere in that is the truth, because it's very important that Hanush is obviously real. It's not a figment of Jakob's imagination. Then this whole film is completely and utterly pointless, isn't it? You know. So and there's a very poignant moment in the film when Hanush sneezes and Jakob gets mucus on his visor, you know, and he rubs it and he looks at it and Hanush says, "Oh, you wish to know if I'm real?" And Jakob says, "Well, are you?" "Yes, I'm as real as you are." You know, and then that mucus is on the visor of the helmet for the rest of the film. So that is kind of the proof of that. Okay, I hope that answered some of what you were asking.
No, that was
I
great.
tend to ramble.
I was actually wondering if that scene where he's like dreaming, where the spider, comes out of his nose, is how Hanush knew to become a spider. Like if someone, I mean, that's the beauty of film.
No, but I mean, one of the most important aspects of any kind of art, whether it's music or books, there's always a level of impressionism. There are no right answers, The whole idea is for everybody to kind of go on their own journey and ride in this and kind of make whatever their own experience tells them to think about something. You want to give them breadcrumbs and all that because you don't want some art house bullshit, because that just doesn't work at all. But to some extent, it's important that that theory, that might be my new theory now. So like that, that works. That's a reverse engineering of it all. That's good.
Thank you. Okay, why don't you call on someone?
Yeah. I'm gonna take this gentleman right here.
Thank you very much. Now, when you mentioned the Korean ship coming, I was thinking the fact that Peter and Yakov have the thing said, he says South Korean. And then Yakov corrects him and says North Korean. Later on, we have this thing when the commissioner says South Korean.
No, nobody ever says North Korean in this film.
He says North Korean.
No, it says no. I guarantee you, my friend, nobody ever says North Korean. There's no. He says Korean, and perhaps there's a no or something like that. But
Is that what?
yeah. No. I'm sorry if the sound was a little wobbly here today. But there's no mention of North Korea. I can tell you a long story about how in the book that the Russians are the ones that is the competitors in this venture and so on and so forth. But there's very little reasoning for us right now to think that they are the right savior. So many things. Yes, sir.
I was wondering how you got cast for the project. And you could talk a little about the casting of.
Sure. Michael Parrots, who is in here somewhere. Michael? Yeah, producer of the film is sitting back there. An eminent man. Michael is the one who. Michael and I now have a company together, a production company, which we develop our own stuff. But back then he was at another company and he had optioned the book, Spaceman of Bohemia, and he had developed first draft of a script that he sent to me. And I had just come out after being, a very long and hard project in a limited series for HBO called Chernobyl, which was about the Chernobyl catastrophe. So I was like dead beat and tired, and I decided to kind of take a break. My wife is also here. She knows that I actually was like, I'm going to buy a restaurant in Portugal. I'm not gonna make any more movies. It's too taxing. But anyways, Michael sent me this script, and I was like, the minute I saw it, oh shit, we have to do this film. The themes of this sort of, on one hand, sort of narcissistic and vain and arrogant and pathetic guy is me. But also the other guy, the one who actually kind of has to do these things for his own survival, is also me. So I kind of really understood his character. So I felt I needed to do it. Cut to being in LA doing a bunch of general meetings with actors, which is something you do as a director. You meet actors, you sit the whole day, meet like a bunch of actors and talk about like, see if you jive together and if you want to do stuff together. And one of these meetings was with Adam, that was set up, and I've always been a big fan of Adam. I love Punch Drunk Love. I love, Funny People. I love Uncut Gems, but I also love a lot of his other movies. I love Click. I love, there's a bunch of movies that I like with him. So we had this meeting, and he's an extraordinary man from the onset, and he says, like, what about this space thing I've heard about? So I tell him about this, and he kind of responds in the same way as I did it, which is like, well, it's a story about me. We got to do this film. And I say to him, yeah, you know what? It would be really cool, but thing is, like, it's a kind of a small movie that also happens to be really expensive, and we actually need, I know you're massive in the comedy world, but to finance a drama, I'm not sure you can do that. I say to And he says, like, how much money do you need? And I go, like, I need this much. I got you money. And I said, oh, well, I have a deal with Netflix. We make movies that, So, I mean, it was, I might be kind of fabricating this, but it feels like 2 weeks later, we were shaking hands with Ted Sarandos and Scott Stuber and in production. So that was kind of how it went. And then,
Magical. I think we have time for one more. So I saw that hand up there with the red hat. Let's do it.
So I thank you again for showing your film to us. And I have a quick question. So I noticed in credits that everything was shot in studio, but one of the few shots that really stuck out to me was in one of the flashbacks, and there's this field of flowers and like a peninsula of like green.
everything was definitely not shot in the studio.
Where was that shot?
Czech Republic. Yeah.
Was everything not studio in the Czech Republic?
Yeah. 99% of it. There's a couple of weird. We had a couple of additional photography days. The scene of Lenka outside her car in the very end of the film is in Los Angeles, actually, replicating the Czech Republic. But no. It was very important. It was very important that the film, on one hand, was claustrophobic and chaotic in the spaceship, and that we open up into these. I mean, did you for a minute think that when Jakob walks in that river looking for Lenka, that was in the studio? Because then you have very high thoughts about. Yeah.
I saw like in the credits a lot
No. We the spaceship we shot in the studio. All the rest was shot pretty much on location in the Czech Republic. There.
So I feel very bad because
This guy I feel bad for. He's been racing.
Okay, we both feel bad. Yeah.
There used to be a church named for Janusz.
Oh really?
I think it's 74.
There you go. And it's no longer there.
It's a real estate thing, as everything is in New York.
Yeah, of course.
Sell their building and move to a smaller.
We're gonna find it, man.
I did with the orange hat up there. There's like 5 people with red hats in this audience. Last question,
Thank
please.
you for acknowledging, much appreciated. And it's we'll be out on this. It's actually just a tech question. I felt like I noticed in the first, let's say arbitrarily, the first 30 minutes that you had this wonderful color palette going on between the two. What informed me as a audience member, the two viewers, of the red and the blue. That beautiful shot with Carey Mulligan with the background of whatever city that was in the light. Beautiful. It was Prague. Nice. So I was curious about how intentionally you wanted to use that as like chess pieces moving forward with how you were going to further tell the story.
Yeah, zero intention. No, he has nothing to do with those images. No, honestly, I tell him to put the camera on the film. That's harsh, but a little bit like that. For me, image creation is where I come from. I started out with music videos and stuff like that, and for me, it's always been about creating images. And I'm very, very extremely specific of what I want and what I like with that. So I work again. My production design is my most important partner in terms of getting every nuance of color right. Him and I can sit and talk about a teal green color that is in the spaceship for like hours, and and have like 19 versions of it, and, because that's how specific we are with regards to it. But there is no absolutely zero kind of cognitively cleverness behind it. It's just never is. It's just instinct. It just it's just like I want that in this color and I want it in that, and then I think those instincts matched with a certain experience of doing this for 30 years kind of just leads to something that at times at least works, so to speak.
So it wasn't intentional?
Not intentional in the way you're talking about it, as if it's planned, or anything like that. But on a subconscious level, maybe it is, because you're looking for this location, and then you're looking for that location, and that they're going to sit together to some capacity in the edit, and you look, But it's never like, here's the color palette for Lenk outside on the roof, and here's the color palette for that, and let's make sure that. For me, it doesn't work like that at all, actually. So it's more. Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah. It's good. It's good you can do something right after 30 years. I'm very happy about that.
Did a lot right. Thank you so much, Johan.
Thank you guys. Thank you for coming.
Thank you all for coming. Please come back.